All right. So, in the past, I have talked on Training Group Live podcast. That's the one with Joel Park, about the metrics or I've talked about the fact that we use metrics in our program to assess improvement, overall scores at the end. And I've gotten some questions on what metrics that we use, how do we choose the ones that we use? Is there any we got rid of? So I thought that might make for an interesting conversation. So I'm going to walk through the metrics that we use, when we use them, how often we retest them, why we chose them, what they mean, and the ones that we've gotten rid of. And we'll talk through that. I think that'll make for a good conversation. If the video gets a little long, I'll cut it into two parts because I think it might. But we'll jump off from there. So the first thing is we have like a standard battery of metrics that we use, and we introduce them at the same time. And what that does is it allows us to compare class to class. So over time, we develop historical averages on this particular metric or that test or this test or that skills test. And that way, when we get a recruit, we record their score. We can look at it and say, okay, is that within kind of the normal expected boundaries? Is it really out of line high? Like they're a super performer? Is it really, really low to the point where we might be concerned? We can also track class to class averages, and then it allows us to look at improvement over time for an individual recruit. So even though they may score relatively low, we look at overall average improvement from beginning to end on that metric at the end of the program. We can expect them to be kind of in this range up here. So they'll probably catch up and they'll be all right. And that's all good information to have. If you're not tracking, if you don't have some sort of metrics and you're just using the qual, whether they pass or fail or achieve a passing score, you don't really have enough information, I would say, to make informed decisions about your methodologies of teaching. Are your students improving? Are you getting better at being an instructor? So are you seeing your class averages over time climb? Because that's an indication that what you are teaching is good, it's effective, and the way you're teaching it is getting better. Is it getting worse? Is it stagnant? So if you're not tracking things like accuracy, time, and consistency over a period of time, I don't know that you're getting all of the information that you could, and you're kind of leaving a lot of information out there kind of in the wind. So I'll walk through initially the different metrics that we use, why we use them, how often we test them, and then we'll go from there. So the first test we have is a B8 at 10 yards. And so a B8, for those that don't know, I just happen to have one here, looks like this. This is actually just the repair center. An actual B8 is much larger. I think it goes all the way up to the 1 ring. This is just the repair center because this is the part that gets shot the most. But it's designed to be shot at 25 yards, and we just use this piece right here. Anything that's off of outside the 7 ring, or I think ours maybe only have the 8 ring. I can't remember. Anything off of that just doesn't get scored. It's a 0. Because we have our folks only shooting them at 10 yards, and I realize generally B8s, like for official NRA B8 score, are shot at 25 yards, and the typical B8s, whether it's a speed B8 or an untimed B8, are shot at 25 yards. However, this is the first metric we have our folks shoot. They shoot it from 10 yards on day 1 after they've done nothing but trigger control at speed, 1-shot return. Some of these folks, this is the first 300 rounds they've ever shot out of the gun. All we're looking to do is get a baseline score. Where were they when they came in? After at the end of day 1, where were they? That's all we want, is a starting score, and it allows us then to compare their later scores to that as an improvement metric. So we really don't care what their score is, whether they record a 10 or a 99. We don't care. We're just looking to see where they go after that. So yes, 10 yards untimed. It's not a heavy lift, but you have to remember most or many of the folks that I deal with, they've never shot a gun prior to that day. And so to go from potentially being scared of it or never having shot before, at the end of the day, recording a 75, an 80, an 85, 2X or 3X on there, that's not so bad. And it gives them something to feel good about when they leave. Is that super important? A little. You don't want somebody leaving completely crushed and dejected. Yes, they can come back from it, but if you don't have to crush them into dust, why would you? We then retest that at week 4, week 8, and week 9. And again, not really concerned with what weeks 4 and 8 look like. Just looking to see, are they making kind of a gradual or a linear? Is there a curve? Like, are they making progress? Is it getting better each time? Week 9 is when we do all of our aggregate testing. So we test a bunch of the metrics for the last time. That total score comes together. I'll talk later about it, with like how that factors into their overall scores and what we do with that information. The next metric we do is the build drill. We test that on week 2 for the first time. So after week 2, they've had 2 live fire training sessions. They have been introduced to the concepts of, at this point, of predictive shooting as well as reactive shooting. They understand different concepts like how to use the dot with varying amounts of information, and irons for that matter, to change the speed at which they're shooting based on how much information they're getting out of their sights. Something like a stopped stable dot, a bouncing ball, simply reacting to the color inside the window, things like that. So at the end of that day, we introduce them to hit factor scoring. We explain how points divided by time works. Then we demo several build drills for them, showing them various levels of confirmation, going from high levels of confirmation with a lot of time down to a lot less, and how that affects the overall score. So we might show them a completely stop static dot, pull the trigger, stop static dot, pull the trigger, and it might be like a 4 or 5 second build drill. We kind of show them, hey, this is what those points mean. Here's the hit factor. And then we might back it down to a bouncing ball and show them, okay, we went from 4.5 seconds down to high twos, just under 3 seconds. And what does that do for the overall hit factor score, the points scored per second? And then we might demo one with just reacting to color. All I see is the color. As soon as I see the color, I shoot it again. And now, what does that do for our time? And what does that do for our score? And then usually we'll demo kind of going down the other side of the performance curve where we're not seeing enough information. The time gets better, but the hits get worse. So no real visual connection to the target, just as fast as the instructor can pull the trigger. Maybe, we're down sub 1.817, 1.8, 1.7 seconds, but maybe we're getting a lot of Charlies or a few Deltas, maybe a miss or something like that. And so they get to see how the hit factor develops as like, now, yes, we're getting faster, but the points have changed, and like we've reached past the pinnacle of like the speed versus accuracy balance, and we're sliding down the other side of the performance curve. So once we demo that for them, we let them practice several times, and then we do a single run, one by one, on a timer with a tablet, and we score that up for them. And then we record it. And so we have them shoot a build drill on week 2, and then they will shoot build drills pretty much every week, starting week 5, all the way through the end of the program. We get them very, very familiar with the build drill for a lot of reasons. It's quick, it's easy to test. I think it's a decent metric, but there's also a lot of good stuff in there for law enforcement. I think it's a pretty handy drill. It tests getting out of the holster quickly, building a good, consistent, durable grip for a long string of fire, the ability to get on target and like string together several rounds, shooting very aggressively with a high degree of accountability where time really matters. We're working 7 yards, we're working at that 7-yard line, which last time I looked, I think it was like mid 80%, something like that, 85, 86, 87% of law enforcement shootings, at least where I work, are 7 yards and in. So it's a good yard line to work from. And it tests all those skills all in one go. So I think it's an important skill to have. Yeah, it gets a bit of a bad rap as being like an Instagram party trick for folks that are chasing that 1.5, 1.4 build drill. I think there's value in being able to shoot quickly. There's value in being able to do all those things quickly. What I put all of my time and effort into trying to chase a sub 1.6 build drill, no, I wouldn't put time and effort into that. Some guys do, but I still think it's a valid test of a bunch of different skills to kind of let you know where you're at. And we're trying to get our folks down to a reasonable level and have them understand what their capabilities are in the speed versus accuracy realm when it matters. And I think it's a good drill for that. And it's easy to test. It's easy to set up, goes relatively quickly. You can get a lot of folks through it in a hurry. So that's when we do the build drill is weeks 2, and then 5, 6, 8, 9. Yeah, I think so. The next metric that we test is the build drill rundown. Now, we test the build drill rundown for the first time on week 5. So the way that one works is you'll start at the 25-yard line, and you have a single USPSA target. On the beep, the shooter's going to draw, shoot 6 rounds into that target. Then they're going to run from the 25 to the 10-yard line. When they get to 10, they shoot 6 more rounds into the center of that USPSA target. And then they run from the 10-yard line to the 5-yard line while doing a speed reload. And they finally shoot another 6 rounds from the 5-yard line into that same target. So it's a total of 18 rounds shot in 3 strings of build drills from the 25, the 10, then the 5. The whole thing is scored as one continuous string. So you have like the timer's running the whole time. And then you add up the points and it's hit factor scored. This one comes from Matt Prank at X-Ray Alpha. I think it is a phenomenal test of a lot of different skills, and it is extremely accurate to or applicable to law enforcement because for all the same reasons we just talked about with the static build drill, but now we're adding in aggressive movement. There's a reload in there, and we're also having to make decisions about target distance and difficulty, engagement strategies with different types of confirmation, how they change as I move. I mean, there's so many pieces in there that are applicable to law enforcement. So I think it's a really, really nice test. So we test it for the first time on week 5. We score it up and give them the results. And then we have them retest it on week 8. Now, we don't use the build drill rundown as part of our final aggregate. It's more of a fun drill that's informative. But what we do is we record the scores for week 5, we print them, then when they shoot it again on week 8, we're looking for improvement. We record the scores and print them again, and we hang them both side by side, the whole class, and let them look for improvements, because that's really what it's about. Excuse me. Now, the reason we wait until week 5 to introduce the build drill rundown is because, when we do the build drill in week 2, is because by week 5, we have started to train and work on aggressive movement, shooting on the move, the ability to move up range, down range, move aggressively to a spot, arrive with the gun up, visually connected to the target, starting to aim, maybe even beginning to shoot before your feet are fully settled. And those are all skills that like you see in a build drill rundown. So it's a nice way to say, hey, so we trained this in isolation. Now we're going to add it to this metric and see how you guys scored. And I think it works pretty well. And the recruits seem to really, really enjoy it. So I think that's a good place to wrap up part 1. I will talk about part 2 in the next video, and that's where we introduce the dynamic marksmanship assessment drills, the DMAD drills, and those are the mini stages that we use. And I will talk about those and how we incorporate them and when we use them, and then kind of how it all comes together at the end for the aggregate scoring. So if you guys got any questions, if you want to talk about the metrics that you use, put them down below. I'd love to hear about them. Anyway, I hope that helps. Take care.